I mean, it's a resolution. I did write the date in September 17th. Oh, yeah. I actually wrote the numbers down too. The Amanda. So in summer, put the motion together for revenue wave. She didn't clear any of the.
It works.
Should I? It just says, approved.
evening, council, staff, and visitors. Thank you for joining us for the August 6th, 2026 regular meeting of the Fair Oaks Ranch City Council. The time is 6:30 p.m. and we'll begin with the roll call. When I call your name, please say here or present.
I was going to read. Every time I turn on, it's doing that. Is that me?
Okay, we might switch that one. Okay, do you all want to start again? I think my mic was muted. Okay, so good evening, council, staff, and visitors. Thank you for joining us. The Fair Oaks Ranch City Council meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m. and we'll begin with the roll call. When I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Kinney is not present. Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Councilmember Olvera is not present. Councilmember Pearson.
Here. Casey.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Swerg is not present. With 4 of 7 members present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Amanda. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We did not have anyone sign up for citizens to be heard tonight. Is there anybody here that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? And then we'll move on. We have 2 presentations tonight. And I'll turn it over to Joanna.
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. So tonight, it is my pleasure to recognize 2 people tonight. So we'll start with the first one. Mr. James Ramirez, if you'll come stand up here by me. So we're recognizing James tonight for 5 years of dedicated service to the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. James joined the city and our team back in July of 2021 as a maintenance technician. And through his hard work and dedication, he was promoted to a maintenance lead in April of 22. And throughout his service, James has just kind of distinguished himself and set himself apart as a dependable team player who regularly kind of coaches and mentors the newer employees that join his team. He sets a high standard for professionalism and encourages his team to uphold that same standard. So James is actually really known for his excellent customer service skills, his ability to de-escalate situations with patience, respect, and professionalism across the board. His leadership and positive influence and commitment to making every interaction count have been greatly valued on his team. So James, thank you so much for your 5 years of dedicated service and all of the meaningful contributions that you continue to make to the city and our community. And congratulations on this major milestone. And as always, we have a plaque for him to put up, whether that's at his workstation or at home, and then a nice little commemorative 5 years of service pin. So we'll have you hold that, and if you'll stand over here just a little so Casey can get a picture. All right, thank you so much. And next, we have our Employee of the Quarter winner, so Mr. Robert Walk, if you'll stand up here and join me. So tonight, obviously, we're pleased to recognize Mr. Robert Walk as our Employee of the Quarter winner for the 3rd quarter of the year. He is currently our maintenance lead for the facility side of our team, and he actually received 2 separate high nominations, both highlighting the consistent way that he demonstrates the city's core values, which are community, collaboration, and ownership through his service to employees, residents, and just the organization as a whole. So during the quarter, Robert completed more than 140 work orders while responding to several urgent and high impact needs during that time. He helped address a blocked drainage culvert that threatened nearby homes, coordinated the safe removal of trees that were obstructing critical signal lines, developed a solution to protect voter privacy at polling stations, and he quickly created a temporary cooling system when our IT server room experienced an HVAC failure, preventing a potentially significant disruption to the city operations. His second nomination recognized his leadership during extensive painting and improvement projects right here in the public safety campus. Robert coordinated schedules, he communicated with multiple departments, and monitored contract performance, followed each project through to completion. So his attention to detail and professionalism and his willingness to treat every project as though they were his own resulted in safer, more functional, and more welcoming city facilities. So the fact that Robert was nominated twice definitely reflects the meaningful and visible impact that his work has had across the organization, and his initiative, dependability, and commitment to excellence make this recognition well-deserved. So please join me in congratulating our Employee of the Quarter winner, Mr. Robert Walk. And of course, we have a great plaque for him too. All right. Thank you.
You know, it's a pleasure for both council and all of our residents to have you on the maintenance, both of y'all, on the maintenance team and a part of our city staff. So thank y'all every day for what y'all do for us. And that completes the presentations. We'll move on to our consent agenda tonight. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. First being the approval of the July 16, 2026 City Council meeting minutes. Second, approval of a resolution approving the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Development District budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2026 and ending on September 30th, 2027. Approval of Councilmember Roden's absence from the July 16, 2026 regular City Council meeting. And last, approval of the second reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinance, Chapter 3, Building Regulations. This is Article 3.01, General Provisions, and specifically Section 3.01.018 concerning driveways passing through drainage channels with amended requirements for driveways with culverts. Are there any council members that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? If not, then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
From Keith, and a second?
Second.
Scott? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Thank you, council. And we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. We have 2 items up for consideration. The first is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution accepting the 2026 no new revenue and voter approval rates, establishing the proposed ad valorem tax rate for fiscal year 2026-27, and setting the public hearing date for the fiscal year 26-27 budget and tax rate and other matters in connection herewith. And Summer, you going to run us through this one?
Yes. Good
Okay.
evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. And before I begin, I'd like to note that we received the completed tax rate calculation worksheet from Bexar County late Monday after the agenda packet had been finalized. As a result, the presentation and supporting documents were not included in the agenda packet. But at the dais this evening, you've been provided the updated resolution, the presentation, the completed tax rate calculation worksheet, and the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget. So the purpose of tonight's agenda item is to review the certified property values, discuss the calculated tax rates, and request approval of a resolution accepting the calculated rates, establishing the maximum proposed tax rate for the budget process, and setting the required public hearing date. So over the past several months, council has participated in 4 budget workshops where staff presented each department's proposed budget. We reviewed the city's long-term financial outlook, and we received policy direction on key budget decisions. So tonight's presentation marks the transition from workshops into the formal budget and tax rate adoption process. And as part of that process, we'll begin by reviewing the certified taxable values received from the 3 appraisal districts. So these are the certified taxable values, and they serve as the basis for calculating the city's tax rates. The slide compares the 2026 values to last year's certified values. Overall, the city's taxable value decreased by approximately 0.25%, while Kendall County experienced an increase of about 3% that was more than offset by decreases in both Bexar and Comal counties. Now, these figures include property still under protest, and they also reflect the tax ceiling or freeze adjustments. And the freeze adjustments alone reduced the city's certified taxable value by about $11.3 million. So this slide summarizes the value removed from the tax roll through the different property tax exemptions. Now, total exemptions increased to over $427 million. That's an increase of about 61 million or 17% over last year. The largest exemption category continues to be the disabled veterans exemption, totaling approximately $278 million, which is provided under state law. So the total increase this year is driven primarily by growth in that disabled veteran exemption. The second largest category is the over 65 exemption, reflecting the city's local $50,000 exemption for qualifying homeowners. But while these exemptions reduce the city's taxable value, they also provide tax relief to eligible residents. So while the previous slide summarized all the property tax exemptions, this slide focuses specifically on the city's local exemptions. In addition to the local homestead exemption, which removes about $17 million of value from the tax roll, Council adopted the additional over 65 and disabled homestead exemptions in 2022 to provide further property tax relief. And since last year, the number of properties receiving the over 65 exemption has increased by 72, while the number of disabled exemptions increased by 4. So as a result, these 2 exemptions now remove more than $80 million of value from the city's tax roll, and that's an increase of about $2.9 million from last year. Now, with the certified values finalized, staff was able to calculate the city's property tax rates and incorporate the proposed tax rate into the budget. So consistent with the direction council provided at the last workshop, the proposed budget uses a tax rate that incorporates a portion of the city's available unused increment, and that approach generates sufficient property tax revenue to balance the general fund budget without using fund balance. So other than updating the property tax revenue, no changes have been made to the budget since the last budget workshop. But the proposed general fund budget includes approximately $12.06 million in revenue and $11.37 million in operating expenditures, including personnel, contractual services, supplies, and other costs necessary to provide city services. In addition to operating expenditures, the budget includes transfers to the Equipment Replacement Fund and the Strategic and Capital Projects Fund to support the Drainage Capital Improvement Program, the Comprehensive Plan Update, and other one-time capital needs. So overall, the proposed general fund budget is balanced and it maintains reserves in accordance with the city's financial management policy. So although tonight's action is centered on the proposed tax rate that funds the city's governmental operations, the proposed budget to be filed on August 17 will include all city funds, including the utility fund. The tax rate we're discussing tonight is simply one component of that overall budget. So as discussed during that July 16 budget workshop, council directed staff to use only a portion of the city's available unused increment. So the proposed budget uses about 18% of that available increment, and that provides just enough revenue to balance the general fund budget while limiting the impact on taxpayers, and it leaves a portion of the remaining unused increment available for next year's budget discussions. This is the same slide, the same tax rate comparison slide that council reviewed during that last workshop, but it's been updated with the final tax rates calculated using the certified taxable values. So each year, the Texas Tax Code requires the city to calculate both the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval tax rate. So this year, the no new revenue tax rate is 28.6132 cents per $100 of taxable value, and that would generate approximately the same amount of property tax revenue from existing properties as the prior year. The voter approval tax rate is 33.9407 cents per $100 of taxable value, and that represents the highest rate council may adopt without an election. So staff is recommending a proposed tax rate of 31.176 cents per $100 of valuation. Again, this rate utilizes a portion of the city's available unused increment. It is above the no new revenue tax rate, but it's below the maximum voter approval rate. And again, it generates sufficient property tax revenue to balance the general fund budget. This chart also includes the estimated impact on the average homeowner under each tax rate option, illustrating the difference between the recommended rate and the maximum voter approval rate. So if approved tonight, this recommended rate will be included in the required public notice and the proposed budget to be filed on August 17. And as discussed previously, council may ultimately adopt this rate or any lower rate following the public hearing in September. So to summarize what we just reviewed, the tax rates have now been calculated using the certified taxable values received from the 3 appraisal districts, and those values can change during the year from appraisal review board action. Overall, the city's certified taxable value decreased slightly by 0.25%, while total exemptions increased about $61 million compared to last year. The recommended tax rate uses a portion of the city's available unused increment to balance the general fund budget. And finally, it's important to remember that tonight's action does not adopt the city's final tax rate, but it establishes the maximum tax rate that may be considered during the remainder of the budget and tax rate adoption process. So staff recommends approval of this resolution that accepts the calculated no new revenue and voter approval tax rates. It establishes the maximum tax rate for the fiscal year 26-27 budget and tax rate adoption process. And it also sets September 17 as the public hearing date for both the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate. And tonight, because this action establishes a proposed tax rate above the no new revenue tax rate, the Texas Tax Code requires a record vote of the governing body, and so the vote of each council member will be included in the required public notice for the proposed tax rate. But that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? No, I'm good.
None.
Very thorough. Yeah, thanks, Summer. Any
you.
questions from anyone here tonight? With that, can I get a motion from council to approve a resolution accepting the 2026 no new revenue rate of .286132 per $100 valuation, a voter approval tax rate of .339407 per $100 valuation, and establishing the proposed ad valorem tax rate for fiscal year 2026-27 at .31176 per $100 evaluation, and setting the public hearing date for September 17th, 2026, here in this room at 6:30 p.m. For the fiscal year 26-27 budget and tax rates.
So moved.
From Scott?
Second.
From Dale. And any further discussion from council? Any comments y'all would like to make?
I just think it's good to make sure we have a balanced budget and not run a deficit. So even though it raises the tax rate a little bit, it keeps us fiscally strong. So
Okay. Which was driven a lot by the ESD contract that had a significant increase in it this year.
correct.
Yes. Okay. With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That needed to be a record vote.
Thank you, Amanda. I'll turn it over to Amanda for the record vote.
When I call your name, please say yes, no. Pardon the technical difficulties. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain. Mayor Maxton?
Yes.
Councilmember Kinney is not present. Councilmember Roden?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Vera is not present. Councilmember Pearson?
Yes.
Councilmember Parker?
Yes.
And Councilmember Swearick is not present. The result is 4 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Summer. And with that, we'll move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action to accept applicants for vacancies on boards, committees, and commissions, to reappoint incumbents, and to schedule interviews for new applicants. And Amanda, did you want to have some comments to kick this one off?
Yes, sir. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Amanda Valdez, City Secretary. The item we're discussing begins on page 23 of your packet today. So tonight, Council will consider accepting the applications received for our boards, committees, and commissions, determine the appointment process for this year's vacancies, and if necessary, schedule interviews. In May, staff presented what is on screen right now, which is the annual appointment timeline. Staff contacted all members whose terms were to expire on September 30th to determine whether they wish to continue serving. We also advertised the vacancies through the city's website and social media, with the application window closing on July 30th. This year, there are 21 potential vacancies across the city's appointed bodies. Of the incumbents with expiring terms, all but 4 requested reappointment, and the city received 8 new applications. This is different than the details in the packet because 2 additional applications were received after the packet was prepared. Additionally, 2 of the now 8 applicants currently serve on another appointed body, and several applicants expressed interest in serving on multiple boards or commissions. Attachment B in the package summarizes each of the board's vacancies, incumbent interest, and new applicants, but I've also created a very basic chart with the updated details on the screen. So again, of the 21 incumbents whose terms expire on the 30th, all but 4 requested appointment, and then you can see in the furthest column, those are how many of the applicants, how many of the 8 applicants are interested in each of those boards. Tonight, staff is seeking council's direction on how you would like to proceed, specifically whether you would like to reappoint incumbents and interview only new applicants, interview all applicants, including incumbents, or follow another appointment process of council's choosing. Staff has tentatively reserved September 3rd and 17th at 3 p.m. for special meetings to conduct interviews. That concludes the overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
And I just have a couple quick comments. First of all, what we're really doing tonight for the council is looking at process. And so we have a couple questions that we need to answer. And I'll just go through the questions and then we'll reattack them here in a minute. But do we want to interview the new applicants? Do we want to interview the incumbents? Do we want to move forward with the appointment of the incumbents to their current positions? And then we'll determine dates to conduct interviews if that's the direction that we decide to go. So it's really a process that we're going through, determining the process for appointments to the boards, committees, and commissions, and not dealing with the specifics to each of those boards, committees, and commissions. Does everybody understand that? And really what determining the process will really provide the information back to Amanda so that she can get it all scheduled for us and we can move forward with those in the future. Another thing I would like to note is that, so you said we have 8 new applicants, 2 of them already currently serving on boards, committees, or commissions. But I'd like to recognize that we had 6 new applicants that volunteered to serve as part of the city. And obviously volunteering is a big part of our community. And I just want to say it's great that we still have residents who haven't volunteered in the past that will continue to step up and serve the city in volunteer efforts. Anything I missed?
I don't believe so. I think we got
Okay.
it all.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? So for council, the first question was really, do we want to interview the new applicants?
Yes,
Okay. And do we want to interview all of the incumbents?
Yes.
I think it's a good idea. You don't think so?
I think a lot of the incumbents are folks that we know. I think that,
I mean, I'll do,
Go either way.
I think I interact with the boards and committees a lot.
You already know them?
I know a lot of the individuals, so to me, it's not, for me personally, it's not something that I need, but if y'all feel a desire that as we move forward that you want to know these people better, we can do it. But I'll leave it up to y'all.
I think it's okay not to interview the incumbents, yeah.
Are you okay with?
I'd prefer to interview.
How strongly do you feel about interviewing all the incumbents?
I could bypass that portion.
Okay. So we will not interview the incumbents.
Okay.
And the next question is, do we want to move forward with the appointment to all of the incumbents to their current positions tonight? Or do we want to interview the new applicants and then make an overall appointment after the, I guess it'd be September 17th meeting?
I'd prefer to do that.
So no appointments
No
tonight?
appointments tonight.
Same here.
All right. And then right now, so we'd have 8 new applicants if we're going to consider even the 2 that are serving.
Correct.
And I believe having September 3rd and the 17th reserved as special council meetings to conduct the interviews would be enough. We ought to be able to,
I believe so. I think we've been able to fit maybe 5 or 6 per night in a little bit of a tight window, but we could probably, yeah, 2 is more than enough for that. I
Okay.
did also want to state that everyone who is on a committee right now, or a board or a commission, has been interviewed. There was a time right after the appointment process, or the process was sort of vetted, where council did choose to interview incumbents who hadn't been interviewed previously. So I just wanted to make it clear that everybody who is on a board, commission, or committee right now has been interviewed by a council. Obviously, it wasn't the current council, but they have been in the past. That wasn't always the case, but we did. I want to say that was in 2021? 2021 sounds right to me.
thanks, Amanda, good point.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions from anyone here tonight? All right, so if you'll bear with me. So can I get a motion to interview all new applicants for the boards, committee, and commission positions and set September 3rd and the 17th as dates for interviews?
So moved.
Second?
And any further discussion from council? Motion on the, Amanda, did I cover everything as part of the motion that?
You did.
Okay. With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
right, that completes the consideration items that we have on the agenda tonight. And with that, we'll move on to our workshop. First is amendments to our proposed right-of-way ordinance. Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lee Muñiz, Manager of Engineering. Tonight, I'll be presenting the proposed amendments to the city right-of-way ordinance, starting on page 27 of the agenda packet. The purpose of this workshop is to discuss how we currently regulate work within the right-of-way, compare our standards with surrounding agencies, and review staff's recommendation to better protect the city's infrastructure while improving the permitting process. No action is requested tonight. Staff is seeking feedback and direction before bringing a formal ordinance amendment forward. So tonight I'll cover several topics. First, I'll briefly explain what constitutes the public right-of-way. I'll highlight several recent projects that demonstrate why these updates are needed. Then I'll review our current ordinance requirements. Next, I'll compare our regulations with surrounding municipalities. After that, I'll discuss permit fees and permit durations. I'll also provide an example of the City of San Antonio's fee structure. Finally, I'll present staff's recommended ordinance amendments for City Council. Oh, pressed the wrong button. Sorry about that. So the public right-of-way is much more than a roadway itself. It includes sidewalks, utility corridors, drainage infrastructure, medians, and other public facilities. Unless a separate easement is dedicated, utility providers often use this space to install or maintain their infrastructure. Because it is public property, the city has a responsibility to ensure work is performed safely and that the infrastructure is restored to protect taxpayers' investment. As utility construction continues to increase, proper management of the right-of-way becomes more important. These are the two recent examples illustrating the scale of work occurring within the right-of-way. The first project was GVTC's fiber optic project. Over the past 2 years, staff issued 52 right-of-way permits for this project alone. Construction involved extensive micro-trenching and directional boring throughout the city. While much of the work was successful, it required significant inspection and coordination with contractors. SAW's Fox Falls Sewer Project is the next project. This project involved replacing a large wastewater line serving developments outside the city. Unlike micro-trenching, this required a wide street excavation and complete pavement restoration. The project resulted in lane closures on Fair Oaks Parkway and Leslie Pfeiffer Drive for several months. Projects like these demonstrate why strong standards and inspection requirements are essential. So our current ordinance establishes the basic framework for work in the right-of-way. Contractors must register with the city and obtain a permit before beginning work. Emergency repairs are allowed, but require notification to the city. Contractors are responsible for restoring disturbed areas to existing or better condition. Traffic control plans are required whenever traffic or pedestrians are impacted. Erosion control measures must be implemented when necessary. Existing facilities that are abandoned are required to be removed whenever feasible. Utilities are generally required to be installed underground whenever possible as well. So continuing on, the permit application currently requires construction plans, contractor information, proof of insurance, and performance guarantees. Staff also requires photographs before and after construction to document existing conditions. Our current permit fee is $100 and includes all inspections regardless of the project size or duration. Permits remain valid for 6 months. And while the process has worked reasonably well, staff has identified several areas where the ordinance can be better address today's construction practices. So staff reviewed neighboring municipalities to compare permit fees and permit durations. Fair Oaks Ranch is generally on the lower end of the permit fees while providing unlimited inspections. Most cities have permit durations between 3 to 6 months. Some municipalities charge significantly higher permit fees depending on the project complexity. The comparison shows that our proposed fee adjustment remain competitive with surrounding agencies. So what really stood out during our comparison wasn't necessarily the permit fees, it was the construction standards. Several cities require pavement restoration based on pavement condition rather than simply replacing the trench. Many require professional engineering plans. Directional boring has become the preferred construction method because it minimizes pavement damage and reduces future maintenance costs. Some cities require curb to curb or even block to block pavement restoration when streets are in good condition. These standards are intended to preserve roadway life and reduce long-term maintenance costs. So several agencies prohibit cutting into newly constructed streets. Many require contractors to warranty repairs for the life of the pavement. If repairs fail prematurely, contractors are responsible for correcting the work. Some agencies also assess pavement degradation fees because even properly repaired pavement typically has a shorter service life after being excavated. Inspection requirements also increase with larger, longer duration projects. So based on our review and our experience administering these permits, staff recommended several changes. First change is permit types. We would like to create 2 permit categories. Typical permits for the small projects up to 50 feet with a 60-day duration. And second is major permits for a larger project exceeding 50 feet with a 180-day duration. Next is the fees. Keeping the typical permit fee at $100 and increasing the major permit fee to $200. Separate inspection fees from permit fees so inspections cost better reflect the city's actual resources. Establish extensions, expirations, and reinspection fees to encourage timely completion. Next is the construction methods. Require trenchless construction whenever practical. This significantly reduces the pavement damage, traffic impacts, and future maintenance costs. Yes, sir.
The inspection cost, is that every time the inspector goes out for $100, or is it $100 if you need to drop $50?
So for typical smaller projects, the $120 covers majority of the inspections required. That's typically just whenever we go assess the first the SWIP or the stormwater pollution prevention setup, erosion control, making sure that's properly set up, and then once they start to go into construction, whatever work that they're doing, making sure that we have that final inspection after the infrastructure has been placed down, and then before they cover it up.
So like the Saws into Canal, how many times have we had to send the inspector out there? That was a long time project.
You mean the Fox Falls Senate?
Fox Falls, yeah.
Yes. So with that one, we actually had, I want to say it was weekly or monthly occurring meetings where we would go to the site and they would then give us updates on the progress of their project, what they need from us, what sort of, what other additional information they need or future impacts to the schedule. So we would go on a weekly basis, constantly going over there, and that would be myself and my infrastructure inspector at the time, and sometimes additional members of the staff dealing with water. Our water utility supervisors would sometimes have to go out there. So
A lot of man hours.
it
for
was a
$100.
lot. It was a ton of man hours. Yes, which are not accounted for because they basically paid the fee, and then any time that we had to go out there, we would go out there. And not to mention barricade inspection and all that was pretty much free
So, you ready?
now. Okay, Go ahead.
Do we have, are there other municipalities that do it on a required inspection
Yes,
every time you go out?
yes, sir.
Is that what we're looking at?
So we are looking to change that.
I don't have
based-
a cart for the horse.
Yeah, so based on the actual type of a right-of-way permit now would designate how we assess inspection fees. So on the typical one, we're not gonna be as detailed, but the major ones, there's a significant difference. And then those inspections are gonna be based on a tiered, based on project duration. So if their project is longer, then that means they're gonna have higher fees.
I'm just looking at us recruiting.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank
Mm-hmm. Okay, starting back from the top. Okay, so based on our review and our experience administering these permits, staff recommends several changes. Permit types, creating 2 permit oh, sorry. I've already went over that. So staff is also recommending several policy updates requiring pavement restoration based on overall roadway conditions instead of simply replacing the trench. Establishing restoration warranties requirements to ensure repairs remain functional over time. Create a pavement degradation fee when repairs fail or when pavement life is significantly reduced. Simplifying the bonding and performance guarantee requirements. Clarifying inspection procedures and street closure requirements. Update administrative authority so that the Public Works Director or designee can administer permits more efficiently. Overall, these recommendations are intended to better protect the city infrastructure while creating a clearer, more concise permitting process. And that concludes my presentation. Staff appreciates council's time and welcomes any questions or feedback regarding the proposed amendments. Based on the council's direction tonight, staff will incorporate any recommended revisions before bringing the ordinance back for formal consideration.
So Lee, kind of to tag on to Councilmember Parker's question, so in the case where you were doing weekly inspections on a large project like the Fox Falls,
Correct.
then that each time that would occur, then we would assess, in that case, the $120 inspection fee for each inspection of that nature?
No, not necessarily. So it would depend on how they designate the time duration of their project. So when they come to initially apply for a permit, they will designate how long how long it will take for them to be in our right of way and to construct their project. And so based on that duration would determine whether they're on tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. We broke down the tier ones based on 61 to 90 days is a first tier, 91 to 120 days is tier 2, 121 to 150 days is tier 3, and 151 to 180 days is tier 4. And then, so each one of those tiers, every time we're required to go to that inspection for that project, we will assess that fee.
So I'm still not quite tracking, I mean, I get that. So in a tier 2, how many inspections would you do in a tier 2?
It would depend on the type of project and the point that they need to repair. So if they're trenching a long pipe and they need to do the bedding, we would go in there and inspect the bedding, making sure that everything's done properly. Once they cover it up, or in certain cases where they're starting to do the restoration process of putting the pavement down, making sure that, you know, the pavement, they're maintaining that. So there will be multiple points where the infrastructure inspection will have to go out there and make those point repairs. There's even times where they're crossing utilities, making sure they're maintaining proper distance and they have proper protection around the utilities as well too.
But in that case, you would say there's going to be 5 inspections, and you
Yeah,
would give them
we
that
would-
up front.
Correct. We would
Okay.
estimate how much we would think, anytime we would see like any sort of crossing of one of our utilities, we're probably gonna be out there inspecting.
Okay.
So we can kind of account for it and then have them pay up front. And then if we need additional ones, we can have them come in and pay, and then we can go out there
Okay.
and do the inspections.
Thank you. That answers my question.
So it is per inspection.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay, that's
Fee schedules attached. Proposed fee schedules attached.
correct.
That particular case likely would have been considered probably tier 4. Number of days
Right.
we went out to inspect.
So if you had 10, it'd be 10 inspection fees. If you estimated 15, okay, all right.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Okay, Lee, I think you were looking for direction on the ordinance, proposed ordinance that you've laid out.
Yes, sir.
Any modifications or any changes?
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
And with that, we'll move on to our second workshop item tonight, which is the Facilities Master Plan update, condition assessment and space and staffing projections. And Jessica, you're gonna kick it off and introduce Chaz?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Jessica Relucio, City Planner for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. This item begins on page 55 of your agenda packet. Tonight, we are pleased to present an update on the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Facilities Master Plan. The purpose of this project is to take a comprehensive look at our existing city facilities, evaluate current conditions and space utilization, and identify future facility needs as the city continues to grow. This plan is intended to help us better understand our facility needs and provide a framework for future decisions, investments, and priorities. This workshop is an overview of the findings thus far, including high-level report data on site areas in the condition assessment report, the facilities condition assessment in attachment A, and the space and staffing analysis in attachment B. The next Facilities Master Plan workshop will review space recommendations for the city's facilities. With that, I'll turn it over to our consultant, Matrix Consulting Group, to walk us through the various report findings and key takeaways.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is a pleasure to be back here in Fair Oaks Ranch. Beautiful community, and it's been a pleasure working with you and your staff that has been supporting this project over the last few months. My name is Chaz Jordan. I'm a senior manager with Matrix Consulting Group. This feels like it's right in the way of my face. I'm sorry. I have been with Matrix now for 4 years, but prior to that, I worked as a facilities manager for a local government in Florida for a number of years. And that's why I got into this work, is specifically master planning and condition assessments are a best practice in facilities management, and looking forward to the future and making sure that these items are addressed. Our team, it composes consultants from Matrix Consulting Group, but also Alpha Facility Solutions, which is based right here in the San Antonio area, who predominantly did the physical facility condition assessments on site, and I'll go over some of their findings in a second. The project scope that was written down in the RFQ that we responded to really had 4 phases, so we're going to go over the first 2, which is roughly where we're at in this planning process at this point, which incorporates not only the condition assessments from a space needs perspective and a current allocation, but also looking ahead for staffing and space needs into the future, so that the plan considers what could be on the horizon and that you're looking at facilities that actually will have the space required for potential future staffing and future services. So just quickly, wanted to go over the scope and objectives. Really, it comes down to 4 basic items. 1, what does the city currently have and what condition is it in? Secondly, what is needed in the future and when will you actually need it? Third, how can it be optimized to utilize the space effectively and efficiently, and look at where things should be located to best meet city services. And lastly, but probably most importantly, what is it going to cost? And what are the impacts of those recommendations over time? So this is just a quick summarization of the project tasks as we've gone through it. Like I said, we've gone through the first two, and what's circled is basically where we're at now. We've performed our interviews, our surveys, our data input information, and Alpha came and did a physical assessment of the properties. And what we're looking for today is your feedback on the findings of those two areas, as they will then drive potential options for what would be incorporated into that facility master plan for you to review and ultimately approve. We're going to go over the condition assessment results quickly first, and then we're going to talk about staffing and space need projections to get an idea of what is potentially on the horizon. And we really would like to get any input that you may have on those items so that we can incorporate them into the plan as we develop it. So getting started, we're going to talk about the current state of facilities, or the condition assessment phase. And this is a key area where Alpha specifically was very involved. They perform facility condition assessments across the country, even though they're based here in the area, and use various different standards that are industry requirements, ASTM, the American Standards requirements, Building Owners and Managers Association, the International Facility Management Association. All of these have different inputs and areas which are really important to this. And a lot of the focus in this section is really on this property here, the municipal complex, even though we did assess both of the fire stations and reviewed other properties that are here in the city and could be potentially used for expansion in the future. One thing I wanted to note real quick is on this slide you see an average current FCI. FCI stands for Facility Condition Index. Facility Condition Assessments, the national standard, is to assign facility condition indexes to all the facilities reviewed. And it really looks at the value of maintaining the facility and what it would cost to keep it in good working order and usable over time versus the value of a replacement. Similarly to how you would look at your house, is it worth it to put in that extra air conditioner, or is it better to move? It's a basic way of looking at, on a scale of 1 to 100, where a facility probably exists in that framework. And so typically good facilities or newer facilities fall in that 0 to 5 range. Fair facilities that have a little bit of age is usually from 5 to 10, or sometimes 5 to 15, depending on the benchmark. Those that require some additional investment to get in good shape are usually above that, up to 30. And then when you get above a FCI of roughly 30, that's when you really want to consider whether it's worth it to invest in the building or potentially get a new one. So in this case, with to go over some of the areas of a condition assessment and what we did, first we looked at the space allocation. So myself and another team member from Matrix actually came on site and we inventoried and looked at all of the facilities using plans that were provided by staff, using instruments that we bring out into the field. We basically inventoried every room, its function, and its purpose in the city's facilities. The physical conditions assessment was done by Alpha, where they actually looked at the components in the facilities, the HVAC units, the roofs, the carpeting, all of the various areas of the building, and what those various conditions are based upon their visual inspection during that review. We looked at accessibility, whether there is issues with things like the Americans with Disabilities Act that could require additional compliance, or public access areas, how people are able to come into your facilities. We looked at parking availability, whether you have sufficient space on site for the parking that is potentially needed for what the buildings are used for, what building adjacencies incur, whether they are near other areas for operational efficiency, and then lastly, whether they're suitable for renovation, if there's opportunities for use of that facility and potential expansion, addition, and so on. So this slide really talks about current space allocations. So this is the aggregate of that inventory we did, looking at the various buildings that were incorporated into the RFQ, and they really break down into two primary areas: offices, which are primary workspaces for personnel, and other, which could be workrooms, conference rooms, any other various areas such as this room right here, that do not necessarily are primary workspace, but they have space available. So that we can really look at the total usable space in your facilities. And this inventory is crucial to really look at how much you have and whether it's adequate for current staffing. So this is broken down, and you'll see these numbers are a little bit less than the total square footage of the facilities because some items don't get incorporated into that because they're not usable and potential for renovation or expansion. This slide goes over a high level of the facility condition assessments for you all to take into account. This goes over the year that these facilities were built, their general square footage based upon the plans or the review on site, and then their FCI based upon the current year and what would potentially occur in 5 years. And as you can see, your average right now is 9, as was listed on an earlier slide. That's a good FCI for a municipal government. That means your facilities are fairly in good order, they're in good working order, and probably do not need significant replacement plans. But there are a couple of facilities on here that do have higher FCIs, such as Fire Station number 2, the vacant building across the lot here, and the parts warehouse, or the old dairy barn, which is on the other side of the campus. All of these look at what is the current condition, and ALF actually enters all of the data from all of the components of the building, and it provides this FCI in a comprehensive manner. So you can see here where there are facilities that need significant investment and those that are newer or in good order. This slide goes over the maintenance projected costs based upon those FCIs. So Alpha also looks at when do, say, a chiller unit or a condenser unit for an HVAC system or a roof or various components of the facility may need replacement based upon their typical life cycle. And they use what's called RS means data, which is a generally accepted construction estimating system that looks at local and regional costs for those areas, and they project this over time. So this is a summarization of what's in the report that was provided to you. And you can see the direct amounts in these 5-year segments versus the cumulative overall, which Jessica brought up and put into the memo. As you can see, the most significant amount is in the first year, and that's because it also considers deferred maintenance. Those items that may have been outside of those life cycles or outside of the preferred manufacturer's requirements for replacement or update or renovation. And that's why there's typically in all of these plans that we work on, a larger amount in the first year, and then it goes down over time, because theoretically, as you keep up with these plans, you're updating things and making everything time required for replacement and renovation. So the second half of what we wanted to talk about today is staffing and space needs. That second question I brought up at the beginning, which is, okay, we know what we have now and where it's at. What do we need in 20 years? So the facility master plan is going to look over that 20-year time horizon. And so to do an accurate space needs, we need to start with an understanding of current staffing, what is potentially on the horizon. Now, when I say that, on this slide, you can see a current authorized staffing number and a projected. That is purely a projection. So we look at what, we're gonna talk about metrics and how this breaks down in a second, but we look at how many staff per various variables and project that out. That does not necessarily mean that you as a city council will actually authorize that much staffing or think that it will be necessary in 20 years. But the intention is to have a baseline so that we can look at what is probably, or most probably, going to need to be space allocated in 20 years. And that's how we utilize this information. And that methodology breaks down into 3 basic steps. First, we look at growth. So we base it on key demographics, and in this case, it's population and land area. I want to make mention real quick that you all are probably familiar with the police department study that we did a few years ago, which projected staffing over the time horizon. That was a much more extensive staffing projection. That's when we really focus on a particular department or staffing in general. This one is much more utilized at a basic level to give us guidance, not a per staff, a very individual position by position review. So we look at it through this growth requirements, looking at population, which was worked on with city staff, looking at current versus potential increases based upon different metrics that are currently being utilized, as well as land area, which was set based upon what's developed and what could be developed or what is expected to be developed in this 20-year time frame. That then applies to the staffing, which is based upon metrics I'll show you in a second, based upon those metrics versus current staffing, so that we can at least estimate that it will be commensurate with that as growth occurs. And then the space needs is then aligned based upon those staffing items, whether you will need professional employees or frontline employees, et cetera. All of these come with various different space standards which are listed in the report that give us guidance on what we can project for what you will need in space in the future. So these growth projections are listed in this table, and they break down into the two areas. And again, we do these in 5-year segments to really highlight these larger areas over time. Because we also understand that from a financial perspective, not everything can be done exactly in the year projected. We like to give them in 5-year segments within the 20 years so that you have opportunities to move things around based upon the financial needs of the city at that time. But this shows what came out of the projections for growth in terms of population. And again, the land area currently at about 10.26 square miles of developed land. That isn't necessarily the actual size of the city, that's what's developed and how it is expected to develop into those 20 years. So looking at the staffing, we look at various different things, supervisors and managers. We focus on span of control. We don't want to necessarily project a ton of frontline staff or professional and technical staff and not have employees able to coordinate and manage those employees. So we look at this for those types of positions, usually 10 FTEs per supervisor and 8 supervisors per manager. So as we look forward, if increases occur, we try to make sure that there is adequate staffing at a supervisor or manager level to manage those employees. This talks about those frontline staff, specifically with regards to Public Works. Currently, there's about 2 positions, 2.05 positions per square mile. And so looking at that and projecting those square miles forward, that gives us an idea of the Public Works frontline employees we can expect. And professional and technical staff is about 1 per 547 residents. So again, these metrics go into the staffing model and give us an idea of what can occur because of growth over time. When we put all of that into the model, this is what comes out. Looking at 5-year segments again, the majority of the staffing increase falls in the Public Works area because it's the largest department, and the additional growth in the city typically follows to that specifically. Police, we actually utilize the model that we created in our previous assessment, which your current staffing is higher than we projected over the 20 years. So we left that as a stagnant number over this 20-year time frame. The other areas all fall into those other metrics, such as spans of control or the number of professional, technical, or frontline employees that follow those metrics. This projects that you could have another 23 positions in the next 20 years, but that isn't necessarily for sure. It'll be up to you all as those things occur. But we want to make sure that at least we have a good idea of what is possible so that you have adequate staff, adequate space projected in the plan. This is just a quick representation of those space standards we talked about, various square footage allocations for various different types of rooms and areas. This really helps us with understanding the difference between what you have and what you may need. And we utilize a number of different industry standards to come up with these and we tailor them to the community. So as a good example, an executive room type, which is usually the city manager or department director or assistant city manager, in BOMA standards and the General Services Administration with the U.S. is usually around 250 square feet, but that's not how it is here in Fair Oaks Ranch. It's typically closer to 180. So we utilize similar standards based upon actual allocations and then justify them based upon those standards. In this case, these are the numbers that were utilized for those projections. This is a very busy slide because there's a lot of buildings and a lot of departments to look at, but this gives you an idea of the total space needs over that 20-year time frame based upon these projections. And it shows that you will need, based upon these areas, roughly 7,763 additional square feet. You're currently at a good point where you have sufficient space in aggregate for the staffing you have. But at the same time, part of this planning process is looking at individual areas. And that's why this is broken down by these departments and by buildings, is just because some buildings are sufficient in space, that doesn't necessarily mean that the space for a particular department or a particular agency within the city is sufficient. So we have to look at this in this kind of detail to understand what the issues need to be addressed and how those need to be put into the plan. An initial review of the findings came up with these items, which will then be addressed in strategic options and looking forward to the master plan itself. But this is where we would really like any additional input you may have. One that came up very clearly in our review is that there is a need for public meeting space specifically for you all to have a council chambers that is not a part of this courtroom or not necessarily a training room for police operations. So those operations can still commence without those items occurring here. So that was one of the items that very much came up, that needs to be considered in our planning process. Public works space is currently insufficient. The office and support space and all the facilities that they currently occupy is not sufficient for their current staffing specifically, and it's not allocated in the way that you would normally have for particular types of positions, such as multiple supervisors in one office, and various areas like making sure you have plenty of locker room and support space for those types of employees, and that was something that was noted in our review. The municipal court department only utilizes this office here behind this room. But there are some key areas of industry recommendations that need to be considered, like having a secure entrance for the judge or the prosecutor and some other items. So we took that information and we'll be utilizing that to determine some options for how to best implement those types of space requirements. There is a deficiency in restrooms. Some of the buildings in this complex and across the city have limited restroom capacity, or they're configured in certain ways that make it difficult to access. So that is one area that we are definitely looking at and will incorporate into all of the options to make sure that additional restroom facilities and adequate facilities are provided. There is constraints here on the site with being able to provide parking and how to reconfigure the site so that you could provide more or provide adequate access throughout the property. And it's constrained by the way it's currently laid out, which happened before the city incorporated in many ways. That being said, looking at that and how the site can be best managed so that you can alleviate some constraints while also meeting those parking needs is going to be a part of our process. And then finally, the 2 fire stations are something that we are focusing on as well. Fire station number 2, based upon the FCA, based upon its location and its general configuration, does not appear to be able to be utilized for fire service any longer. It just does not have the right configuration. Fire Station 3, however, we're going to assess for how to utilize that based upon city direction as a more permanent and 24/7 fire station for the future, one that could be utilized for those services, and looking at what would need to occur in that station to make it usable again. So, to finalize my presentation, Right now, we are finalizing a deliverable to present to the city that will assess these different strategic options that came out of these first two deliverables. And we'll seek direction from you all on what is the options you want us to incorporate into a draft master plan. That draft master plan will then incorporate not only the options that we want to consider, but also the cost impacts that could be on the horizon based upon that, whether it's a renovation or an addition or any other items. And then a final master plan will be developed out of that input, which will incorporate not only those options that will be listed, but also give you a strategic capital roadmap based upon not only what is necessary for those issues to be alleviated, but also incorporating what Alpha provided in terms of making sure you're maintaining current facilities so that they are well invested in the future. And with that, I will take any questions, comments, or any direction you may have.
Good?
I have a few.
Go ahead.
It looks like, I mean, I'm just really asking for confirmation. When I looked at both the staffing detail and the facility square footage space, that the majority of it's public works.
A good percentage of it is Public Works. And one of the areas we're really looking at is what would that look like in terms of the overall setup of facilities, whether does there need to be additional office or support space with the maintenance building that is currently there. There's new property that the city has purchased at the north end of the city, whether that can be developed into something that, like a satellite facility to support their operations. And also access over into that side of this property. As you all know, there's one entryway here near the police department, and that sometimes gets congested, especially with the parts warehouse being right there in the middle of it. So we're going to assess that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like, and I understand, I guess that's based on too, with the population growth, new roads coming in, need for more maintenance, right? Water.
Yeah. That one's more focused on the land area growth. The Public Works frontline staff is based upon the square mileage growth that was projected. Just because square mileage tends to be a better indicator of infrastructure needs as opposed to population growth. Population growth is typically better for other areas of municipal government, so we try to tailor those to the appropriate area of the government.
Then maybe one more question. Back on slide 9, when you were showing the current forecasted needs for 2026, and you had this $1,723,000 up here. I'm just curious, is that saying, yeah, that one there, is that saying that currently our systems need to be either updated, replaced, or something to the tune of an estimate of that number that we're behind? Effectively?
Yes, so if you look into the, I believe it's attachment A in your information from the Alpha Facility Condition Assessment Report, it actually outlines this more specifically. So what it does is it takes it building by building and looks at the HVAC systems, the roofing systems, and so on and so forth, looks at when they were installed and when they would typically are recommended for replacement. And so that's where the deferred maintenance numbers come in. So when those things are really set, say a roof was supposed to be replaced in 20 years, but that was say 3 years ago, that number will still be showing in that first year of this report because it was deferred. It was not done at the established time frame.
And that would bring things up to a current state of good quality, good performance.
Correct.
And then going on for the rest of those periods, assuming that was put into place, then from like the second line up to over the next 4 years, that would be a kind of expected spend.
Right.
For whatever else is going to need to be replaced on that
Right.
timeline. Okay.
And it's actually in the Alpha report broken down year by year. So you can actually see how, say, in the 2027 to 2031, the 1,128,000, you can actually see how it's more fully broken down to specific buildings and specific types of equipment each year of that sequence.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Not necessarily questions, Chaz, but it's a good planning device for sure. And you're talking about as the buildings age, to keep them well-maintained,
Correct.
correct?
Yes, it's meeting the manufacturers or industry standards for the maintenance of those buildings. So, and again, using the roof of any building you want to choose as an example, if their useful life is at 20 years, the breakdown basically looks at what would be the cost at that 20-year time frame and plugs it into the right year. When we get to the master planning phases of this project, we'll actually look at that in aggregate, not only and look at it year by year, not only based upon those maintenance needs, but what potential renovations or potential additions or maybe even a new building, if that's something that is recommended, how that would all play out and when it would be most appropriate in that capital timeframe. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else? Keith, you good?
I think I'm good for the moment.
Okay. Any questions from anyone here tonight? We did do this as a workshop, which usually says that you were looking for some feedback from council. Is there something specific or?
No, that's.
Point, this was primarily intended set the baseline for the upcoming assumptions that go into the plan, both from the, again,
Okay.
comfortable with those assumptions as we start planning that out. So assuming that to be the case so far, then the next steps will be draft final plan, possible adoption in November. That's the schedule.
Okay. Part one of the workshops.
Part one of
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Scott, when you come back with that plan, and I think the assumptions have solid base, right, from what I've heard, they seem to appear fine. When we get that recommendation, will we have any idea at that time of the ultimate high-level estimate of cost to do all those things, or is that something that we will have to do at a separate time?
Yeah, we will be incorporating in the next portion of strategic options preliminary cost estimates based upon the size scope of the various different areas of recommended consideration. And we will hone those as we get closer to the final plan based upon guidance from the city staff and inputs from you all. But they will be, again, based upon not only that RS means general data on estimating for construction, but also construction costs here in the area and what they have been over the last few years.
Okay.
Mhm.
No, I just want to say I appreciate it. Our suggestions and feedback.
Thank you.
Jessica as well, done a great job as a liaison between our needs and the project team, and voluntold to manage this project.
Hey, Scott, where is fire station number 1? We got 2 and 3. What was that one? Anybody know? I'm just curious because, yeah.
Steve, I might look at you. Fire station, originally when the city was formed, Leon Springs Volunteer Fire Department serviced us. They had a fire station on Ima Ruth, which was their only station. When we built the Meadow Creek one, it became fire station number 2.
Okay,
I'm sorry, fire station number 3. Number 2 was the Fair Oaks Parkway.
all right, thank you.
I got that right? Yeah.
You think calls it 4.
Correct, yes. So I think, I always call it as the Fair Oaks Parkway Fire Station or the Meadow Creek. But that's where 1, 2, 3 came from, and now 4, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz.
Thank you all.
Thank you for being here tonight and the information, and Jessica for organizing everything. We have one report on the agenda tonight, which is our quarterly financial and investment report. Summer.
All right, yes, for the record, I am Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So tonight I'll provide the third quarter financial update and quarterly investment report for the period ending June 30th. And this item begins on page 245 of the agenda packet. But overall, the city's financial position remains stable. Through the third quarter, revenues are exceeding expectations in several key areas. Expenditures remain well controlled, reserves are fully funded, and both the general fund and utility fund are expected to finish the fiscal year in a strong position. But before we get into the details, I'll just highlight a few key items. The general fund is currently projected to end the year with approximately $197,000 operating surplus, increasing our total fund balance to about $8.86 million. Revenues continue to outperform budget, driven primarily by strong sales tax collections, and property tax collections remain on track. Overall, general fund expenditures continue to track closely with the adopted budget. And utility operations are also continuing to perform as expected, with revenues, reserves, and capital funding coming in close to plan. But this slide simply summarizes the governmental funds included in the full financial report. But again, I'll focus primarily on the general fund since it represents the city's primary operating fund. So revenue performance remains one of the strongest areas of the year's financial results. Based on current trends, total general fund revenues are expected to finish about $334,000 ahead of budget. The largest favorable variances continue to be sales tax, property tax, and investment earnings. The only significant revenue shortfall is municipal court fines and fees, which continue to trend below budget. But these favorable trends continue to support that positive year-end outlook. Our property tax collections are performing as expected. Through June 30th, we've collected just over 98% of the adjusted tax levy. And based on that performance, we expect property tax revenue to finish approximately $87,000 above budget, including our delinquent collections. And the collection trends are consistent with what we've seen in prior years. Sales tax is probably the city's strongest revenue story this year. Based on the first 7 months of collections, we currently expect sales tax revenue to finish approximately 10% above budget, or about $193,000 over the adopted budget. Although the monthly collections can fluctuate significantly compared to the same month in the prior year, the overall trend continues to be positive. And so staff monitors the collections each month, and we update the projection as additional data becomes available. Our residential construction has slowed from the pace that we've experienced over the last several years, but that's consistent with our expectations. Through the third quarter, 19 new residential permits have been issued, and total permit revenue is projected to finish slightly above budget. Looking at expenditures, overall spending remains very close to the adopted budget. Personnel costs are projected to be slightly above budget because of the adopted compensation plan, and vacancies have been filled sooner than originally anticipated. But those additional personnel costs continue to be absorbed through savings in professional services and several other operating categories. So based on these projections, the general fund is expected to end the year with approximately $8.86 million in total fund balance. That includes approximately $3.2 million of unassigned fund balance. Both the emergency reserve and budget stabilization reserve remain fully funded in accordance with the city's financial management policy. There are no significant changes in the remaining governmental funds since the last quarterly update. Most activity continues to reflect planned capital project expenditures and the timing of those projects. Overall, these funds are performing as expected and remain consistent with the adopted budget. But I'll shift now to the utility fund, and overall utility operations continue performing well. Total utility revenues are expected to close the year just above budget. While water operating revenues are projected slightly below budget, those reductions are more than compensated for higher than expected investment earnings. And then wastewater revenues remain generally in line with the adopted budget. Utility operating expenditures are projected to finish slightly above budget, primarily due to personnel costs, but we are projecting savings to budget in the capital projects and capital purchases categories. So this slide focuses on whether our utility operating revenues are sufficient to support the day-to-day operations. And as a reminder, operating revenues exclude investment earnings and also remove restricted revenues such as debt service fees and impact fees, since those are legally dedicated to specific purposes and not available for operating costs. So after removing those restricted revenues, available operating revenue is projected at about $6.36 million compared to operating expenses of about $6.2 million. And that results in a positive operating income before depreciation. After depreciation, operating income is negative. This result is consistent with the city's financial plan because the city finances major utility infrastructure through long-term debt, while utility rates are primarily intended to support operating costs, maintenance, and smaller capital needs. As discussed during the budget workshops, the 5-year financial plan includes a future rate adjustment to gradually improve long-term rate sufficiency as our operating costs continue to increase. So the utility fund is expected to close the fiscal year with an overall net position of more than $21 million. That's an increase of about $1.3 million from the beginning of the year. And it continues to maintain its operating reserve, its debt service reserve, and capital equipment replacement funding while supporting our ongoing capital investments. But before I conclude with the quarterly investment report, are there any questions on the financial report? Yes.
The sales tax keeps going up. Is that primarily from online retailers that we're getting more of that revenue?
I haven't looked at the detailed report, but most of our sales tax is from online sales.
Yes. I know I help out a lot, so just say.
All right. So during the quarter, staff completed a competitive solicitation and purchased $6 million in East-West Bank certificates of deposit. These purchases diversified the portfolio beyond local government investment pools while locking in fixed yields between 3.84% and 3.86% through some staggered maturities. The investment portfolio generated almost $311,000 in interest earnings this quarter, bringing fiscal year-to-date interest earnings to approximately $971,000. And the average yield remained relatively strong at approximately 3.67%. This slide just summarizes the city's investment holdings. The decrease in total investments during the quarter primarily reflects normal operating expenditures and also payments for capital improvement projects. But the city's investment portfolio continues to comply with the investment policy, and the quarterly investment report contains additional details on the city's investment holdings and portfolio performance in a more comprehensive review. But that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, council?
No.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? As usual, great job, Summer.
Thank you.
Very thorough. That's all the items that we had on the agenda tonight for us to cover. Does any council member have any announcements they would like to make? No? Thought you were going to surprise me. I've got three announcements. Starting August 1st, the City of Fair Oaks Ranch utility has moved from Stage 2 of its drought contingency plan into Stage 1, so that everybody's aware of that. If you haven't seen, beginning August 3rd, the speed limit on Ralph Fair Road was changed from, was reduced to 50 miles an hour. And that covers the area from Ammon Road down to the front gate at Camp Stanley. And a lot of questions on this. It's a TxDOT road. TxDOT did the traffic study on it. They made the determination based on all the safety aspects they look at that 50 miles an hour was the appropriate speed limit. And so a large portion of this road is outside of our city limits, but it does include all of the portion that is within our city limits, just so that people are aware that it was reduced to 50 miles per hour. And the last, we put out so much information on it, but within the next 30 days, construction will begin, knock on wood, will begin on Dietz Elkhorn Road. Once again, we had the open house. We had a great attendance at it, but for everybody's awareness, during the construction, there will always be an eastbound lane of traffic. For westbound traffic, it will be detoured. The project will be done in 3 phases, and it is scheduled to take 12 months. So it's going to take a year to complete this. I ask this is a major connector within our city. I understand that. It has a lot of traffic on it, but the only way that we can complete this construction is the manner in which we're going through. And I understand that it will be some inconveniences for motorists that are traveling on Dietz Elkhorn Road. All I ask, please be patient. We'll get through this, and a year from now, we'll have a brand new, wider, with a shoulder on both sides of the road, and safer road, smoother for traveling on Dietz Elkhorn. Key message, yes, please be patient. Scott, anything else that I missed or we need to add?
Nothing further.
For council, anything that y'all would like added to a future agenda? Nope, nope. Amanda, anything we missed tonight or anything I missed that we need to go back and cover? Or Scott, anything from you? I have the time now is 8:02 and we are adjourned.